thought it was very smart. It's really unique. It was like nothing I'd ever read before. And I thought that there were still elements from the kind of DC canon of Batman. There were still references to that world, and yet it also felt like it was something that was brand new and stood on its own and was irreverent and funny and twisted. It was a brilliant script. You never know if what he's saying is real. But the thing is, I didn't think about it saying this may not be real. I'd say whatever he's saying, it's very real to him. Now, whether it is objectively real, that's questionable. But for him, it always felt real. So I felt like I had to approach it sincerely every time, whatever the scene was. But it's really left up to you, to the audience, to decide what you think is real or isn't. Todd has this great confidence and irreverence. I mean, I feel so fortunate to have worked with him on this movie. So he really gave me the confidence to just be willing to discover something in the moment. And I think that spontaneity was probably really important for this character. It just gives it kind of this kinetic energy. What I like about this movie is I think that there are several different reactions that people can have, and they're all valid. And there's something really exciting about being in a movie that requires the audience to participate with the character in a different way. I mean, usually characters' motivations are so clearly defined that we're telling the audience precisely what to feel and when. And what I like about this movie is it's really up to interpretation.
Arthur, I think, is a man who has been kind of ostracized and is trying to deal with that and doesn't have really the emotional capacity to know how to. And you know, in trying to find his freedom and his own movement and his own identity, sort of missteps in a way of missteps in terms of our social construct of how we perceive somebody should behave in society. She is, you know, struggles like him as well, not necessarily on an emotional level in the same way he does, but in, you know, in other parts of her life. And I think that's a place where they find equal ground. But also she, you know, she is kind of this interpretation of what he wants her to be for him, and as a friend, as a companion. And so it's interesting because she's this fabrication a little bit of what he needs and wants from her. Todd is, you know, he was a really great leader on this film. I the entire time I was sort of in awe with his sort of visual and kind of mental interpretation of this story. And I think he's really like the perfect mind to do this. I think he's like a little wild, but he's confident, and he has this very kind of calm, sort of driven sense about him. And I think to kind of structure and put this beautiful kind of master work together, you sort of need this this kind of personality.
It was surreal, and it was quite an honor to be here. So, and the response was fantastic. So yeah, it kind of went perfect. It was a dream night. That's what made it fun, is the ability to kind of take something that really has no particular backstory and it was very liberating. There were no rules, and we just kind of did what we wanted, and certain things we kind of backwards engineered into, you know, why he is certain ways, and other things we just made up out of the blue. And you're right, you know, not only is the story have an unreliable narrator, but it's Joker, so you know, it's almost an unreliable narrator. We meet a guy who is, you know, someone who has been told his whole life that his purpose is to bring laughter and joy to the world, and he believes it, and he's sees himself as this put upon sweet soul in a city full of harsh people. To me, Joaquin is just one of the greats, and he takes something on the page. It's hard to explain to people you know, what an actor brings to a role. You know, you might see it and think everything in there was written down for him to do, and it's just not that way ever. And Joaquin is one of those guys who just takes it and makes it his own in a very specific way that you would have never guessed. This was my first time with Joaquin, and it was intimidating at first because I hold him in a special place, but I quickly got over that, and we got along really well, and I think it was a very intense collaboration. Robert De Niro plays a guy who's been on the same talk show probably for 30 or 35 years. His name's Murray Franklin. He's a kind of typical American talk show host, a little bit vapid and a little bit shallow and just sort of there every night to make an audience laugh. And Arthur, who's somebody who has severe father issues, meaning he's always looking for a father figure, really sees Murray as that. Zazie and Frances Conroy, who's just plays his mom, and I think is just so beautiful and simple in what we needed her to do. And Zazie, who plays somebody that Arthur knows and has a relationship with, so to speak. Well, one of the fun things about doing these kind of movies is, again, the interpretation, like taking something that people know and putting your own spin on it. So for us, Gotham wanted to feel as real as possible, and the movie in general, we kind of ran everything through a very realistic lens. So it's a broken down city it's a city of broken dreams, let's say that. And it's on its last legs, you know, and we wanted that to kind of, the film to feel like that. Movies are a giant collaboration. It's obviously not just the actors, but the cinematographers, which is a guy I've worked with for 6 or 7 movies now, Lawrence Sher. Mark Friedberg is the production designer. He grew up in New York in the 70s and 80s, and that was where we were kind of paying homage to. So he had old photos, and you know, we would go through things and talking about the look. So yeah, we had an amazing team on this film. I think directors have a lot of tools with which they paint a picture, and music has always been a huge one for me. Hildur Guðnadóttir, this Icelandic composer, she lives in Berlin now, but she's from Iceland. I had contacted her early on in putting the movie together and asked her to start writing music just based off the script. And she just started sending me music based off of scenes she read. The score is a huge part of the movie, as you know, and I thought she did a really beautiful and unique